Oh well, hello. It has been roughly 7 days since our last, well, discussion, meeting, whatever the case. Let me just make sure the audio is somewhat okay. And then, yeah, we'll move on to talking a little bit about what I did last week and what I'm going to change. So, I'll be right back with you and then we get to talking. Alright. It seems as terrible as always. Perhaps I'll soon get a new microphone. Not too sure about it, but you know how it is. You know how it is. So, let's just go by order of... No, let's not go by order of most recent. Okay, so, first of all, let's talk about the things that I used to do, or that I have been doing for the most part, which is this weird combination of, in a way, isolated studies, although I dare not really call those things studies. But let's just, for the sake of understanding, let's just stick with that. So this weird combination of, studies and just random doodling, like this sort of stuff here, right? That's what I've been doing for the majority of the 148 days. So, yes. The biggest issues I see personally, or rather, let's go with this. So, the biggest or the most progress I've made was just trying out how to paint digitally. I think that's where I learned the most, because it's something I've never done before. And the idea is, as to why I've learned the most out of this, it's kind of like, imagine a video game, right? Let me just open a new thing here quickly. Imagine a video game where obviously there's levels. An RPG with levels. Amazing. With a skill tree. But actually, let's just say levels, like D&D, for example, right? So let's say you have 5 levels in, I don't know, technical drawing skill. So this encapsulates the accuracy of your lines. So let's say this is your accuracy. This is how quick you are on your feet. So it's like a combination stat in a sense, So like it's your speed and how fast you are when you draw. Sorry. So this is your speed and your accuracy. Let's say you are level 3 with composition. So this is maybe your spatial awareness. SP, spatial, whatever. Let's just say space. Spatial awareness, or let's just say awareness. And the point is this, right? For level 1, like there's different systems behind leveling, right? So there is the, I don't know what the technical term is, but there is the simple method, right? You have one level, and one level equals, for example, 1,000 points of experience, right? So this is the simple method. This is the simple method of learning or of leveling up, right? So that means level 2 is literally just 1 plus 1, which means in total you need 2,000 experience points to reach level 2. Say you start level 0, for example, or maybe this is actually level 3, right? So this is level 3, right? Is 1 plus 1 since you start on level 1, right? So you start level 1, you level up once for 1,000 EXP, then you level up once more for another 1,000 EXP. So now you're level 3, right? And then there is the cumulative or like the exponential level up. So I hope I'm writing this correctly. Exponential exponential, whatever. That would be something like one level, or level 1, or rather going up to level 1 or going up to level 2 requires 1,000 EXP, right? But now, if you want the next level, say level 2, for example, it's all of a sudden not a plus, but perhaps a times 1. So it's whatever you earned before that times that. So in this case, that would be a little bit much, right? That might be a bit much, but let's say there's a factor of 100 or maybe 10. Let's say each level up, okay, is a step up by a factor of 10. So instead of requiring 1,000 EXP for the next level now, so let's say you go up to level 3. So this is level 3, and this is level like 2 or something, right? So to go from level 2 to level 3, you now suddenly need 10 times more EXP than you needed earlier, right? So let's say from level 1 to level 2, you needed 100 EXP. Then you needed 10 times more, which was 1,000. Then you needed 10 times more, which was then, or which would be now 10,000, right? So now you need 10,000 EXP for the next level up. This might be a bit much, but you get what I mean, right? The actual factor in a proper video game could be something like 1.5, for example, right? So instead of needing 1,000 EXP, now you need 1,500, right? Or 2.5 or something, instead of needing 1,000, now you need 2,500, for example, right? Then 4,800 or something, just as an idea, right? So, and that's kind of like how it is, or rather that's exactly how it is with art, gaining the earlier levels, so to say, is pretty easy, gaining like a sort of foothold, quote unquote, right? Or rather, rising to level 1 isn't really difficult. Perhaps even rising to level 2 isn't that difficult. But once you reach level 3, level 4, or level 5, going beyond that takes considerably more effort and more focus. So it doesn't just happen accidentally, you need to actually work towards it. And a lot of people do that by studying specific things that they want to improve on, right? And that oftentimes shows up in, or through rather, just isolated studies. So they will sit down, right, and they'll just think to themselves, okay, they essentially fall for a trap. That's something the beginners do. Someone like me, for example, right? So say they really would like to draw a comic or something, right? But instead of drawing a comic and drawing an ugly comic, they instead just learn the fundamentals. They just learn the fundamentals. Because without the fundamentals, you can't do anything. Actually, without the fundamentals, you can do a lot. That's the trap. Let me just write that down. That's essentially the trap card that's being played on a lot of beginners, and they believe it because it makes sense, and it isn't necessarily malicious advice, but more often than not, what someone who just doesn't know, because you have to understand where a beginner is coming from, right? So imagine you're a baby, okay? And you have a big, open, wide world, and you don't understand anything, right? But you want to understand. You desperately want and need to understand the things around you so you can orient yourself. And now imagine the first person you meet to ask for advice tells you something that will lead you down a rabbit hole that makes you want to just not ask for help ever again, essentially. That's what learn the fundamentals truly is. It's a trap card that a lot of beginners fall into because they don't have the the sort of parent figure, essentially, that wants the best for them, that they personally know to be a good person, or that they trust to be a good person, and that the parent has some sort of vested interest, you know, to be the best version of themselves. But before I go on talking, I just quickly blow my nose. So, okay. So the only thing they have left, right? Instead of turning to that sort of parent figure in my like baby analogy, right? Instead of turning to that parent figure, the beginner artist turns to a more experienced artist, right? Which isn't a wrong thing to do, obviously, right? Actually, that's a very wise decision. The only issue is that, first of all, their advice can't be individually tailored to you, right? So they have to, first of all, consider, since it is most likely going to be posted somewhere, right, on a social media platform of sorts, they have to consider, okay, who will click on this? Why would they click on this? So they have to have some sort of title that's intriguing, interesting, or whatever. Now, whether that means by necessity that they would clickbait is a different topic, but just keeping that in the back of your mind, you know, might be helpful. So they have to consider what someone might want to click on, right? Then they have to obviously give advice that applies to as many people as possible, right? Not all of them, obviously, but most of the artists that you will find on social media, well, appeal to the largest possible audience, right? That's just how it is. That's how the algorithms work. It would be amazing, you know, if there was hundreds of thousands of artists, you know, that all give their very individual advice that applies only to them, and you could just find all of them, you know, listen to what they have to say and decide on your own if what they have to say applies to you, right? In that sense, or in that case, then we wouldn't have this issue, you know, of this very general advice of learn the fundamentals, and then you fall into the trap of just learning to learn, or rather of studying, you know, endlessly all sorts of things, oftentimes even in a quality or that is like undesirable, so to say, you know, because you just don't know. It's well, anyway, I'm drifting off. The point of all of this is to say that there's many different reasons why someone would give you this advice, and there's many different reasons why you would think it reasonable and why you would consider taking that advice, right? But I've just recently come to rethink it through the advice of someone else, right? Or rather, having something or having someone talk something that I had in the back of my mind talked back to me. So I've been considering just doing the sort of thing that I would like to do, right? Creating the sort of pieces that I would like to create, right? I've been thinking about that for quite a while now. Instead of just endlessly filling pages, you know, with like floating heads and mannequins and what is essentially a redrawing of someone else's art, you know, which is a lot of what this is, you know. Since I don't know, I have very big trouble. I have big trouble drawing from like purely human reference. So if it's just a photograph, I kind of find that difficult when it comes to faces, at least, you know. So I don't know why that is, but maybe that will fix itself sometime. But anyway, the point is just that to not or rather to get myself out of this rut, you know, out of this endless cycle, I'm considering doing like a project-based approach, because I've been doing it, I think, the wrong way around because of, again, some advice from someone else, because ultimately I don't know what I'm doing either, right? I'm starting out, I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. I'm just helplessly flailing my arms around, right, in the hopes of getting lucky and hitting the hidden EXP box or chest or trinket or whatever, right? Like I'm essentially, imagine yourself being in a completely dark room. You don't know where to go. You can't see anything, right? You just know that somewhere in this room, potentially, there's like an EXP box, right? There's an EXP box or like some sort of trinket or something that, you know, gives you EXP essentially to level up, right? To finally be able to open your eyes or something and see, but you just don't know where to go. And there's a billion different people yelling into your ears from all sides, you know? It seems kind of difficult to navigate, no? And that's essentially, I would say, the daily life of a beginner that watches YouTube videos. And while I personally have stopped doing that for quite a while now, like I mostly watch either stuff from Xifid or Sifid. I don't know how to pronounce words in English. I'm terrible. Or someone else. So like philosophy meets art in a way, you know, if that makes sense. Something that isn't trying to necessarily give me tips on how to do something in technical terms or how to approach something in a technical sense, or give me the method to get better quick, you know. I'm not looking at any of those videos because they're just dog shit. Most of them, the vast majority of them, if not all of them. I'm also interested in just hearing about the difficulties of other artists, you know, how they dealt with them, you know. Essentially, hearing the stories of them is what I'm interested in. How they, for example, deal with the sort of uneasiness, you know, of not knowing where you're going with your art, you know. Like you sit here and you draw things that you like, sometimes things that you don't, you know. You try new things. Oftentimes you draw the same things very often. And I just like hearing stories about how they got through these phases or how they deal with them now. Because what I've been hearing is that you don't really graduate, you just gain a sort of not necessarily deeper understanding, but instead of being too caught up in the intricacies of the study, for example, you gain a bit more of a, how do I say this? I'm kind of like, I'm kind of like missing the words. Like, I don't know how to phrase this. You just gain greater perspective, essentially, or a different way to view these things. I don't know how to. I can, I would probably be able to say it in German, but not in English right now. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Probably because I don't quite understand it as much as I would like it. But anyway, instead of just yapping too much here, let's keep on going here a little bit more. As you can see, it's just more of the same, more of the quote study. It's like terrible. I really want to get, faster though. And I don't know how to do it. What I do notice, however, is whenever I'm starting, say, a drawing with a lot of detail, I very quickly lose my patience, or I don't know if that's patience or not, but I end up getting lost in the detail instead of outlining the greatest or biggest, largest forms first and then working into that. What I've also seen a lot of more experienced artists do, someone like Leviathan or someone like 58MW, or there's like this other Korean artist who essentially just has two like eyes as a name. Let me see if I can find him. There he is. Should have a name. User. Okay, yeah. User CM2C01H. Okay. That's exactly. Some Korean artists on YouTube as well, is that they essentially keep their sketches, for a very long time, very ugly in a sense, So they are really extremely rough for the most time, for most of the time, So how do I explain this? They essentially take a sketch, right? Let me see if I can give you an example here. It's like a very loose sketch. Yeah, this is probably it. So they take like a very soft, round brush or ball pen brush in a sense, and they just do the outlining or whatever. They just draw the sketch for whatever they are trying to accomplish, right? And they keep that very rough sketch for a long time and essentially paint over the sketch. And it kind of seems to me, at least, that Leviathan, for example, just paints directly over his sketches. In his case, I think he even uses even larger brushes, and they are always super dark, so it might not be as soft as this one is. So But he essentially just, you know, roughs in a sketch, and then just once he's done with that, you know, once he has all the parts of the sketch done, whatever that may be, right? Hair, clothing, whatever, he goes into what is essentially paint mode, and he takes his brushes and just starts rendering on top of the very rough sketch, you know, and just slowly works his way over the sketch, you know. What amazes me personally in this approach is just the, you know, the lack of care in a way about perfecting the line work, you know, while still keeping the finished piece squarely within this like Japanese illustrative style, you know. Obviously, every artist ultimately has their own style, Leviathan included, but I don't know. I just like it, and I think that might be something I would like to try too. You know, just the approach and the ease with which he just, you know, sketches his drawings and then just goes into paint over them, over the sketches, without caring too much about the layers. Although, you know, obviously the background, I think he has separated from the foreground, at least that much he's doing. But I just want to keep things simple, because most of the time, as was the case yesterday, when I tried, quote, animating something, unquote, it felt like most of the time I was just fighting the program, you know? I was getting agitated about not getting the program to do what I want. And that's something that immediately just keeps me from wanting to go on, you know? It just makes it all like extremely uninteresting. Like, if I have to fight my tools to do the work that I think they are supposed to be doing, it's like, yeah, I lose interest very quickly, which I think is also a reason why I found painting to be pretty easy with Critter, because there isn't really that much that you do in terms of settings. Like, you can obviously turn on some sort of like normal maps for your canvas to, for example, make it look more like paper or more like a canvas for painting, right? But I'm not interested in all of that anyway, at least not right now. So that falls flat. And I think I tried it once following a tutorial, and I just noticed that that makes the entire program essentially not work, non-functional, because it just started lagging so much. So yeah, no thank you, I'm not interested, you know. So I just found painting to be quite easy, because it's the only thing you really have to worry about is your brush. And while I don't understand most of the settings within the brush, you know, settings widget or whatever, I find it a lot easier to work with than the animation timeline and all that sort of thing, you know? Like, I still don't understand how, for example, they ever thought it might be a good idea to save every single frame that you're making when you're drawing an animation into your RAM. Like, what's the point? Like, unironically, what's the reason why you would do that? That seems like an awful idea, no? And then you don't even properly clean that shit out? Come on. Like, on their own website, right, on how to animate in Krita, they describe that you should break up animations longer than 3 seconds into sections that you work on separately. I don't know. Is that a professional workflow? It kind of seems like you have to do the work that the developers didn't want to do, you know? Though, of course, I don't want to be too harsh on them. After all, I'm using it for free, so. But still, that doesn't excuse them from making very stupid decisions, I think. Like, why would you save that into the RAM and not clean that shit out? Why do you not have a garbage collector? I don't understand. I don't follow. Anyway. So the point of all of this now is kind of like just me trying to shift to a more project by project based approach to this. So instead of learning, for example, through the week, and I think that's how all of this started, right? So I would open or create a practice week document, right? And at the end of the week, essentially, or at some point throughout the week, I would create a just week so and so document where I would try to draw a more finished piece, right? Which ended up not working. I didn't do it for most of the time. For most weeks, I didn't do that. I tried, but I didn't really go further than sketches because I didn't, I treated it just the same as a isolated study, essentially. I was in the wrong mindset for all of this. And what I want to shift into more is into an approach where I prioritize making either a finished illustration, foreground, background, characters, whatever it is that captures my interest, something that I'm really interested in, or something that I came up with, I don't know, after waking up or something. You know how the creative process works sometimes. You have like an idea of writing a story, for example, right? Or you really, really, really want to write a story, for example. And for most days, you don't know what to do. You don't know what to write. No clue. And then one day, you're like, I could do it like this. And if you're some sort of sensible person, you would immediately turn to a notebook or some sort of writing instrument to write down your idea, right? Which then allows your brain to think of more things relating to that one story that you just came up with, For me, that happens, I don't even know. Recently it hasn't happened really that much. But when it does happen, it's like a feeling of elation and like happiness, I don't really get from anywhere else, like this specific sort of feeling. Kind of weird. But anyway, and I just come up with like backgrounds. So like a background story, or rather a world in which the characters then live. I don't have any characters in mind at that point. I wake up, for example, right? And I'm like, okay, I could create a world where people would live like this and that, and this is the reason why they live like that. This is why these certain things happen, whatever, and then I just outline essentially the world. And then I just, at some point, this inspiration fades out, and then my like logical or reason faculties of reason take over, and I just analyze that stuff, and I kind of work out some of the flaws, rethink some of that, and I just make sure I write it all down, and then sometimes later, 2-3 days, sometimes weeks later, I may come up with a character, or some plot point or whatever. Usually not, though. I don't really like plot points, as in writing a story through which you notice, or in which you notice by reading that I had this idea, right, for a specific event. I would much rather write a story in a specific world where there are specific circumstances for specific behaviors of people, and where I would then have oddballs or very particular personalities act as the main cast, according to their personalities, live out their lives in that world, and I would just expand that into perhaps an antagonist. I would have certainly plan out a villain of sorts, but I don't really like the plot point idea at all. I don't like it. Anyway, I'm yapping. I want to draw a little bit today. I'm not too sure if I'm gonna just shade or rather put down flat colors here in this image. I'm still super tilted by the fact that I can't draw Saiko's legs at all. Like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. And I don't know where I would go to learn how to draw a woman, right? Sitting in what's the word? Caesar or no? What's the specific Japanese sitting? Let me see if I can find it. Caesar. Okay, yeah. So like how do I find, right? Reference, for example, of a woman in a knee-length skirt, so a skirt that goes over the knees, sitting in this pose. Like, how do I get reference for that? Because last time I checked, Last time I checked, I couldn't find anything, you know? And it seems I still can't find anything. Like, how would I go about this? I have no idea. Like, ironically, how do I go about this? So, should I just rip off her legs? Like, what do I do? Man, sometimes I wish I didn't delete the old version. How do I do this? I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know. At all. No clue. No clue. I have no clue. But I still like her like armor. Although it obviously isn't um like accurate to the anime or manga. It is more like an adaptation in a way, you know? It's like leaning towards or being similar, right, to what Kivia actually wears in the show. But it's not exactly her armor, right? This is not a one-to-one copy by any means. I still really dislike her hair. I just can't make this like view angle work. I just can't. And I'm just terrible at drawing hair. Like really terrible at drawing hair. So maybe today I look a little bit more into how to draw hair again. Or maybe I'll just skip and refuse to do anything I can't do. Maybe from now on until all eternity, I will refuse to go outside my comfort zone and I will only draw the things that I can draw. Well, obviously not, but sometimes, you know, you just want to shut yourself in. I'm still, and I don't want to, like, give myself more credit than I deserve, but I'm still positively surprised with how well Kivia turned out, you know? Or both actually turned out. Considering that first, let me make sure I recite my rules here properly. Recite. It sounds awful. But crit, let me see, training, illustrations, variables, right. Limitations. Okay, so considering that I didn't use direct references, only reference for likeness. So, what does her armor look like, right? Which, again, there is not really a pose of her sitting like this, or rather, there just isn't a pose of her sitting like that. What does her hair look like in terms of color? What does her eyes look like? Although I didn't really do a good job of copying that at all. Or her head, or her chin, or most of anything, really. So, terrible. Whatever. It's not my fault, okay? I have 2 left eyes. Or something. Anyway. I'm yapping too much. I just like how this turned out in terms of just the sketch alone. I still hate this. Why can't I draw a skirt? This is so it's shameful. Truly shameful. Unbelievable. Like, actually unbelievable. Okay, well, alright. I might actually just keep the microphone on for today. We'll see. We will see. So, alright. Let's try do some hair. Um, hmm. Like I've heard, the advice of, well, you need to draw ribbons. Okay, right. I need to draw ribbons. Does that help me shape the hair though? Like, I need to draw ribbons and then what? Like, come on. Sometimes either I'm fucking retarded or everyone else is. Like, someone is retarded in this equation. And it can't always be me, okay? Maybe, or maybe that is how retardation works. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see who has the last laugh. Or maybe not. That reminds me of the fan art I tried doing for Liz. Elizabeth Rose Blood Flame, you know? I think I did quite well on her hair though. I don't quite remember how I started shaping it though. Like, I understand that hair is mostly just about shape language, right? And shape language is mostly about consistency. You know, if for example I choose this as the shape of, say, the bangs of the hair, or the strands of the hair rather, right? Then I have to actually be consistent. I can make it smaller, right? Let me see if that actually works. I can make it smaller. I can make it a little bit larger, obviously. I have to stay pretty consistent with the shapes, you know, for the hair. This might have been the greatest of shapes, but you know, you make your bed and you have to lie in it, and such and so forth. Whatever the sayings are. Kind of like this, in a way, I guess. I'm still missing like a proper brush that helps me do these like thick to thin transitions. How do I say this? So like, okay, let me get this tablet here and properly set it up so I can actually demonstrate what I mean. So this is a line, right? As you can see here, it's a little bit lighter where I started drawing the line, a little bit heavier where I ended it. And obviously at some point I have to start learning how to control the thickness of my line, right? But whenever I try that, and I don't know what the reason for that is, either it's the like overtuned or like super, what's the word, sensitive settings for the brushes that I'm using. So it's either the program that's way too sensitive to the smallest pressure, and ironically, so the issue is like two sides, right? I think on one hand you have the program. You saw that thing here? You see that bump? This shit here? This is like the most minimal difference in pressure that I can possibly apply to anything as a fucking man that isn't a twink, you know? Like, it's insane. Like, how do I even... This is insane. It's insane. Like, how do you control your arm well enough to to do any of this? To draw a line that's kind of like starting out very light, right? Stays consistent, and then gets thicker, right? You can see it just doesn't work, and I think that's because the settings are too sensitive. I'd basically have to become a 18th or 19th century bodybuilder, you know? Someone who can control each muscle individually in their entire arm to be able to properly control my line weights, you know? That kind of worked out now that I'm kind of angry and not paying too much attention. Maybe I just have to be more angry, you know? I don't know. But I just want to do these things more consciously, you know? Like, I think I said this before, but in drawing or in art in general, there's an aspect of luck involved, you know? RNG essentially, because the practice, or rather what you're doing here, is essentially strengthening your connection to your subconscious, you know, to the vast network of computational power that your subconscious represents, you know, all the things that it can do, and that's vast. Like the overwhelming majority of your thinking, right, is not you. It's just not. Ironically, it's your subconscious. You know, most of what you pick up in terms of signals, say, of where you should be going, right? Imagine you are out and about in the middle of the night, right? All the signals you're getting that let you know maybe going down this valley, maybe going down this street, you know, might not be the best idea, or perhaps going down this street might actually be a very good idea. All those kinds of like pieces of information. That's not you, right? That's something a lot more sharp, you know, something that can do computations a lot faster than you can, and is a lot, how do I say this, a lot more sophisticated than you are, you know. And for a long time now that I've been doing or trying to do art, you know, I've been thinking that, especially when it comes to the mysterious building a visual library, you know, I don't really think there's anyone out there that actually remembers actively all of these shapes and how to make them. I don't think that's actually what's happening. Unironically, I don't think that is what's going on. More so, I think you're just finding ways to connect with your subconscious on certain topics, for example. You know? And that sort of thing takes time, and consistent practice and rehearsal. I don't really think it's, in active memory at all. Something that you can actually just recall. And a lot of people, or artists rather, speak about they draw best, right? Like a lot of, sportsmen. This looks terrible. Let me just get rid of this shit. Like a lot of extreme, what do you call this in English? A lot of sportsmen. I don't know the proper words. But the people that, do extreme sports, like marathons, or take part in the Olympic Games. Someone who's like spending most of the time training their body to do a specific task, for example, very, very well. They all have stories of, being in the zone, just like many experienced artists have the same. They sit down, they draw, and they don't even enjoy drawing, they just, let me rephrase this. They sit down to draw, and before they can even start to enjoy the drawing that they're doing, right, 2 hours have passed, and they have created a masterpiece, for example. So, honestly, I don't even know why I brought this up, why I'm talking about this. But, it is what it is. Though, honestly, I feel like I just want to mute myself now. I just don't feel like talking constantly. So, I just want a little bit of quiet, So, yes. Alright, I'll see you next time. Oh, right. One more thing I wanted to talk about, which completely eluded my mind. Since I'm now trying to move onto a more passionate project by project approach to my learning, which isn't to say that I'm not going to do any sort of studies, right? But they are going to be subordinate to my accomplishment, or me accomplishing a project that I have started doing, right? In this case, for example, this drawing, finishing and rendering these two characters fully, right? This is now my project. I want to finish this. I want to finish that. I really enjoy that. And so I would only do studies to, for example, learn how to draw a skirt in a Caesar sitting pose, for example, right? Or how to properly shape hair, how to do the detailing on hair, that sort of thing, to actually progress my drawings. Or I would just try to finish a project, however ugly it's going to be, finish it to the extent that I'm able to finish it, and then go back in, analyze it, and do the studies, that have that I have been able to pick out as I need, as me needing them. Sorry, my English is kind of terrible today. So I'm kind of like, now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm kind of tending towards the latter, because what I will end up doing is the thing I'm actually trying to work against, which is like constantly the need to perfect my drawings. So let's say I have a drawing like this, right? You can tell the hair looks shit right now. Obviously, it's gonna become a little bit better once I add like these sort of thinner ends to all of the hair, right? And I properly shape it a little bit better. But it's not gonna be that much better, It's gonna be like, maybe if now it's a 3, I might get it up to a 5 in a very objective standard, right? But I'm not gonna get it to a 6 or a 7 or an 8, right? Or a 10. This is not gonna be the most amazing hair you've ever seen. It's not gonna be the most glorious hairstyle that the earth has been ever graced with, Obviously not. So now I'm at like what's the word? If you have like two decisions, like a path that leads in two directions, there's like a word for that, I think. Anyway, I'm like at this like crossing or whatever. No, not crossing. Yes. I have to essentially make a decision now, right? Do I want to draw, say, or begin a project, draw that project to a certain extent, right? And then just finish that drawing to the point of the utmost of my abilities, or good enough so that I can finish it actually, Or do I want to constantly stop in the middle of my project, go back to studying something, putting it into my project, hopefully progressing it, then noticing another thing that I have to change, going back to study, going back to the project, going back to study, going back to the project, going back to study, back to the project, back and forth, back and forth. I already just talking like this gets me extremely annoyed. So I think I'm going to go with the first option. I'm going to just pick out a thing I want to draw, illustration, or maybe a comic, short one, long one, whatever I feel like my abilities allow me to do in a reasonable sense. Then I'm going to apply the rule 6 out of 10 that I talked about a few weeks ago, which is essentially a way to say it's fine to half-ass your drawings, your art, because it's not a good idea to wear yourself out trying to perfect something that you just don't know anything about. It would be much better to just do it terribly, and do it terribly often, and whenever you finish doing it terrible, you look at what went wrong, you analyze it, and then you fix it, And I think there's like an approach. There's like this card game, English card game, quote unquote game, which is essentially like a way to order your life. I don't know what it's called, unfortunately, but there's like this one card that essentially describes exactly what I'm saying here right now. it orders the importance of your tasks, or rather, it orders how important it is, or rather, how you should approach any task, right? So first of all, planning is very important. Very, very incredibly important. If you have no plan, you can't go anywhere, you know? You might as well just run in a circle. Second order of importance is doing the thing. Third and fourth, and I think fourth is actually just correcting the thing. So planning, doing, then I think analyzing and correcting in terms of importance. And I think that's how I want to structure my projects as well. So with that said, I'm going to mute myself now. Do a little bit more drawing. I yapped a little bit too much today. Sorry. Either way, I hope you always have fun when you draw, as much as you can. And I'll see you next time. Another thing, I might actually switch from doing this every single day to every other day, or every third day, or however I think it's helpful, you know. So if I'm actually gonna do this on a project by project basis, I want these projects to actually be something that means something to me, you know, that either speak to me on a personal level or interest me on a personal level to some extent, you know. I don't just want to do this in a mindless drone-like state where I just, like in school, you know, memorize something for the sake of memorizing it. You know, the only difference right now is that I don't have the outlet to forget all of it, you know. Like if I had any reason to forget all of the things that I studied, right, I just would immediately, because this is basically the same thing. So again, I will still keep the structure of it being like, say, day 149, but day 149 might not be the 24th of July. It might be the 26th of July, for example, you know? But in between, I'm not drawing, for example, right? I'm just not drawing. I'm just calm. I'm just relaxed. I'm not doing that thing, okay? Not drawing. I'm just doing something else, for example. We'll see. I'll try it. We'll see. So this time, the phrase that I like to use at the end of the videos might actually mean something a little bit more. Anyway, I'll get to a little bit more drawing, and I'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves, and, you know, challenge yourselves within reason while having fun as much as possible.